Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky with question and answer shorts. Shmuel Lowenstein asks, if Judaism is so into Tzniyus, why do we have public mikvehs? So this is a very good question. I'm first going to go on the other side. There were women who came from Europe to America, and they didn't keep taras mishpacha because they said, my mother never did that. My mother never went to the mikveh. Because they were so tznius about it that nobody knew about it, and they were young when they came across, and they never learned. They didn't even know there was such a thing as mikveh, there was such a thing as taras mishpacha. So you have to be careful when it comes to not talking about certain things, because you can create an atmosphere about it. So I was teaching in a particular Beis Yaakov, and one of the highlights of my course that I did there was on, shidduchim in marriage. And I had a series that I would go through, right? First I would explain women's role in Judaism, because I said, marriage is between a man and a woman, so you have to understand what a man is and what a woman is, yeah. And then I would talk about Tzniyus, and then I would talk about platonic relationships, and then I would get down to the nitty-gritty of dating and deciding what you want to marry, etc. And every year there would be certain girls who would complain to the head of the school that they didn't want to hear about these things, they found it offensive, whatever it was, and he said, no problem. You're not required to take his class, just don't go to his class. And the other girls told their friends about this course because they said, this is the most effective thing that I did in 2 years of seminary. Because nobody teaches us what to look for in a boy, how to decide how to get married, what we're supposed to do on a date, how we're supposed to be engaged, what we're supposed to do when we're married. He got into all the nitty-gritty and explained things. So at one point, they brought in this woman who was like a mashkicha to supervise everything. And so one girl, after I gave a class on Tzniyus, was upset, and instead of going to the menahel, went to this lady, and the lady told me in no uncertain terms, stop this course. So I came in the next class, I taught about something else, I came in the next class, I taught about something else, and someone said, what happened? We were in the middle of doing the shidduchim. And I said, I can't do it anymore because I'm in an unsafe environment, because someone in this room, instead of having the decency to come and speak to me or to speak to the menahel, decided to rat on me to the mashkicha, who has now answered me from discussing these things. And the girl said, but my friends told me that this was the most important thing she got out of 2 years of seminary. And I said, it is. And they said, we're losing out. And I said, you are. And if you could find who this person is, you should tell them that they destroyed a very important chinuch aspect of your life. At the end of the year, I wasn't rehired. But first, the mashkicha had a conversation with me at the end of the year, and she said, men don't talk about these things, and if we do talk about Tzniyus, we never mention boys. We don't talk about that. We talk about Kedusha and Bas Melech Panima, etc. And I said, you know what? You're involved in a very, very frum Beis Yaakov. And I see your girls after 2 years of seminary, and they dress terribly. And she said to me, you're right. I said, so what you're doing is not effective, and what I do is effective. And she said to me, you're right. But that's our Masorah. So why should we be effective when we've always done it this way? So, if you keep such Tzniyus about taras mishpacha that people don't even know about it, in the end result, you may be doing more damage than good. I understand not advertising about it. Well, I have 8 daughters. There's a big difference between girls and boys. My girls know when my wife is pregnant a day after conception. They already know that she's pregnant. I don't know how they know it. They just know it. Girls know these things. Yeah. My wife's sister, who has boys, had mostly boys, they didn't know she was pregnant until she was on the way to the hospital to have the baby. I mean, boys don't pick up on these things, So, of course, my wife was always very circumspect about going to the mikveh. I would always come up with some story, and my wife is a terrible liar. That's one thing I have not given her over the years. She's just honest to a fault, you know? So I try to make up a story, but she repeats it over in like a loud voice, like, okay, I'm going now to my... Anyway, but we assumed that we were doing a pretty good job until my daughters got married, and somehow it came up, and they said, yeah, we always knew when you were going to the mikveh. You always had this one bag that you took with you, so we always knew it was the mikveh bag. So, you know, so you, of course, don't advertise it, but by the same token, you don't have to hide it. So, if you have enough money to build your own mikveh, which is one of my dreams, I want to be able to make my own mikveh. And I don't like people. There's something about, you know, when I start going to the mikveh, you know where when you're a little kid, you have those nightmares where you come to school in your underwear? After going to the mikveh here in Israel, which is much more of a public affair, I don't have those dreams anymore. That's already good. If I'm wearing my underwear, I feel good. So, by men, it's this giant communal experience. It's like really, I don't know. I feel very uncomfortable with the whole thing, you know. But you get used to it, you know. But everyone knows that there's a mikveh. Given a choice between building a mikveh and a shul, you build a mikveh. It's essential for the community. So if you're rich enough to make your own mikveh, and nobody ever even knows that there is a mikveh, ma tov ma noim. But we're not rich enough. Having said that, you try to put it in a private place where it's not going to be in a high-trafficked area, where there's not going to be a lot of people coming and going and watching everyone going. My son, who lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh Gimel, says when they built the mikveh, they built it on a street that was a dead end, and every man on that street had to walk past the mikveh just to get off his street. And so they petitioned the area to build some staircases further down so that people could walk up to the next street without having to walk past the mikveh. So yeah, you don't want to keep a roster of who's coming. We don't want to have, you know, that be the conversation of the town, but neither do we have the funds to be able to, you know, build a secret mikveh or to have everybody build their own mikveh. It's just prohibitive. But if you want to build your own mikveh and you have the funds to do it, ma tov ma noim. And if you do, you know, and it's in Har Nof, please let me know, and just give me a key. That's all I ask, so I can go and use it by myself. So I don't have to worry about sharing it with anyone else, because it leads to embarrassing situations. Men just go communally, you know. I was taking my shower before the mikveh, and somebody comes over and says, you know, you never paid me for the shalach manos we sent with Moshe Shapiro. And I said, I've said this before, but never with as much kavana. I have nothing on me. So I was at a disadvantage. And I came out of the mikveh, and I was getting dressed, and some guy came over to yell at me. He didn't like the way I was davening in shul. I'm standing there, you know, half dressed, and I'm thinking, you don't see a problem with this? You don't have that much decency in you? So yeah, as a community, we need a mikveh. We need to know there is a mikveh. We need to support the mikveh. But we don't have to be involved in everybody's individual activities that go on in the mikveh. I remember after I had my heart surgery, so I went for the post-op meeting, and he says, you know, you can't go swimming, you can't take a bath, you can't go to the mikveh. I said, can I go if I don't go in the water? So he says, I guess so. Why? I said, just for the experience, you know. People get together, they talk, you get all the news at the mikveh, you know. For one thing I never understood is Erev Shabbos, they sell dips at the mikveh. I mean, how many times are you going to dip? I mean, that seems like double dipping to me. But anyway, so it is quite an experience. If you ever have the opportunity, if you're a man, go to the Belza mikveh, the gigantic Belza shul in Yerushalayim. They have a makolet there. It's open almost till Shabbos. They have flowers. They have prepared food. They have, that whatever you want, they've got there. It's one of the greatest experiences. You go to the mikveh, you come and do your shopping, or you do your shopping and you take it to the mikveh, whatever you want to do. It's really quite an experience. And, obviously, it's something that is supposed to be private for the individual, but not for the community as a whole. This has been Rabbi Orlofsky with our question and answer shorts.